On the day when I was giving Peter a birthday gift, I ran into Peter's younger sister. She was wearing a white gown, sitting next to Peter. The brothers around were teasing them, urging her to feed Peter an apple with her mouth. Their lips touched as they both bit into the apple, turning their faces even redder than the apple. Everyone around was cheering. It was truly a perfect match of a handsome man and a beautiful woman. If I wasn't Peter's girlfriend, it would have been even more pleasing to the eye. I watched coldly through the glass door of the KTV room as the people inside cheered. My boyfriend Peter was holding his sister, intimately sharing the same apple. His childhood friends and university classmates were clapping and even calling me sister-in-law loudly. The sister blushed with embarrassment, like a little bird nestling into Peter's arms. They truly were a good match. If Peter were single now, they would be even more compatible. But as it was, they were laughing and having a great time. Suddenly, the thought crossed my mind, when will Peter bring this beautiful girl home as his wife? Peter's nonchalant response was, "Not so fast, Coco and I are still young, we have to wait a month or two." Standing at the entrance of the KTV room, I suddenly felt foolish. Everyone else was thinking about getting married, and here I was joking about it on Valentine's Day, only to be ridiculed as desperate for marriage. With his beautiful woman in his arms, where did that leave me? Was it justifiable for him to play with my emotions so callously? It was quite meaningless. I raised my foot to leave, but overheard Coco, the girl in Peter's arms, speaking softly. "I'll wait for my brother. I know he's in a rising period of his career now. I'm not in a rush to get married, I'm still young." In that moment, all my dignified thoughts were blown away by the wind. Young? Who hasn't been young once? Peter had witnessed my entire youth, back when I was as young as Coco. Tender like a flower bud about to bloom, so delicate that a light pinch could make dewdrops fall. Yet now, as I subconsciously touched my face, the smoothness and collagen brought by technology couldn't erase the marks left by the passage of time. I was already 28, while Coco had just turned 20. An 8-year age difference was like a chasm between us. Coco was so sensible, unlike some older women who kept pressuring Peter to marry, annoying everyone to no end. Each time we drank, it was like a witch hunt. Could this group of friends really harm Peter in any way? That unintentional remark suddenly brought the atmosphere in the room to freezing point. Peter, irritated, shot a disdainful look at the person, his expression full of disgust. Why stir up trouble out of nowhere? Stir up what exactly? Was it wrong for me to defend my dignity? I couldn't swallow this humiliation. I picked up my phone and took a picture of Peter and Coco kissing passionately, sent it to Peter's family chat group and subtly informed Peter's parents. "Congratulations, aunt and uncle, on gaining a daughter-in-law. When will you send me some sweets?" After sending the message, I didn't pay attention to the group's discussions. I left the group and blocked everyone involved. Peter thought he could force me to marry by exploiting my fear of aging, pinning the blame for a breakup on me to create a persona of a lovelorn woman wronged by him. But who ever heard of committing infidelity and earning a good reputation? I had never been one to meekly accept disrespect. I drove home, picked up a custom-made proposal banner from last Valentine's Day, took the initiative to propose to Peter, and ended up being knocked to the ground by him. I hung up the banner with a picture of Peter and Coco kissing passionately on Peter's doorstep, placing a line of candy next to it. Since we were lovers, I naturally wanted them to be together. If Peter wanted to marry another woman, I would clear away any obstacles for him. I wished him a happy marriage. I displayed so much grace and understanding. A few of my acquaintances were stunned, especially seeing the picture of Peter and Coco kissing on the banner, their eyes full of pity as they looked at me. I didn't need their pity. I smiled and took a piece of candy. Peter was getting married, and I wasn't so heartless as to not acknowledge it with grace. Some aunties exchanged glances quietly, without saying a word, and left with a few awkward laughs, accepting the candy I offered. As I watched their retreating figures, I heard snippets of conversation carried by the wind. What's wrong with Peter, almost getting married and still fooling around? You never really know a person. That girl is really pitiful. Look, I exposed my wounds, revealing a bleeding side to elicit a single comment of pity. Tears I had been holding back trickled down my cheeks, then dripped onto my hand. I wasn't pitiful, not in the least. At least I wanted to retaliate, to prevent being seen as pitiful. Upon arriving home, Peter called. It seemed he had seen the banner downstairs, and perhaps his parents had called him to handle the situation. I had no doubt they wouldn't stand on principles and righteousness to discipline their son. At most, they would scold him for being foolish, not for him being unfaithful, but for getting caught in the act. Many nights, I hoped Peter would text or call me first. But now, As his call came in, I simply hung up and blocked him. I then sent a message in Peter's company group, "Peter is up to something good, treat everyone to coffee." With a red envelope featuring Peter and Coco kissing, offering 10 envelopes of $200 each. Soon, the whole group fell silent as no one dared to take the money. Before I could type, a notification appeared saying, "You have been removed from the group." I found it amusing, watching the shadow of a once honorable Peter fade away from my heart. He was all talk and no action, truly not a man of his word. He even removed me from the group chats of our high school, middle school, and elementary school classmates. What a coward, all talk and no action. I chuckled silently and, without a word, picked up my luggage and headed to the airport. It wouldn't be long before Peter came looking for me. I didn't want to face his unwarranted accusations or vent my frustrations only to have him deflect all the blame onto me. Men were like that, never willing to admit their mistakes, always outsourcing blame. Wearing sunglasses to hide my swollen eyes from crying, I couldn't pretend I wasn't hurting. After all, we had shared some beautiful times together. Those were the companionship-filled student years, and I couldn't be so indifferent, not even to have one good cry. With closed eyes, I couldn't help but wonder, what if I had not caused a scene? Maybe things would have just blown over. I could have pretended nothing had happened and continued to endure Peter's behavior. As long as I could withstand the test of time, sticking with Peter. By the time I reached 30, 35, even 40 or 50, as long as I could outlast time with Peter, someday his patience would wear thin, he would initiate a breakup, and I would just be a perfect victim, a wife who had been through hard times only to be cruelly abandoned. But soon, I discarded that thought. Even if I did that, played the perfect victim, what would I gain? Peter's guilt, the world's pity, nothing in the end. Was it worth sacrificing my precious time just to portray an image of a perfect victim? But what about Peter? He had achieved worldly success, and everyone who saw him had to respectfully address him as the CEO. Over time, betrayals would eventually come to light. If I kept bringing up the issue, it would be seen as me unable to move on from the relationship, shifting the blame onto me. This world was never fair, especially to women. When they were wronged and wanted to fight back, they would be criticized for not doing so gracefully. So why bother being graceful at all? I decided to make a scene, to make Peter uncomfortable, to ruin him during the time when he needed a good reputation the most, in his rise at the company. I wanted to make up for my lost youth with his failure. Before boarding the plane, I posted the picture of Peter and Coco kissing on Facebook, wishing them well and a happy marriage, and even bought 7 to 8 influencer accounts to repost it. In the age of information, with enough money spent, one could achieve rapid effects. Under the influence of these reposts, many people flooded the comments section, overriding the scandal surrounding a few new generation celebrities. Fans in the comments section were the most agitated. They broke up? I really wanted them to be together. The cheating man deserves to die. It's a love story from elementary school all the way to university. How dare he betray her? Can you believe that homewrecker? Reading the comments section, I can even imagine how terrible Peter looked at his phone. But what does that have to do with me? Peter dug his own grave. Why should I feel sorry for him? In the last second before boarding the plane, I suddenly heard someone calling my name. Peter rushed into the boarding gate, his eyes bloodshot, staring at me. He went crazy shouting my name, but was pinned to the ground by the security that arrived. I watched as the plane door was slowly closed by the flight attendant. His figure was gradually swallowed up by the gap. In the last second, it seemed like his heart-wrenching screams could be heard in the wind. "Christine, do you know what you're doing?" I knew exactly what I was doing. I was getting back at him. Peter and I can be considered childhood sweethearts, innocent little kids together. His grandfather was friends with my grandfather, his parents were colleagues with my parents. And we grew up in the same neighborhood. Everyone thought that we would get married in the future, walk together, and the next generation would continue the friendship between the two families. I also thought so I stuck with Peter since we were kids. When puberty hit, it was no surprise that Peter developed rebellious tendencies, dating other girls and speaking harshly to me. At first, I would be sad, crying alone with a heavy heart. But one day, something changed with Peter, and that girl was history. That day, Peter cried as he hugged me under the street lamp, smelling of strong alcohol and cigarettes. The usually diligent student was for once dabbling in bad habits. Christine, she lied to me, they all lied to me. She was just after my money. For the first time, Peter showed a helpless side in front of me. "Christine, what do I do? I only have you." He buried his head on my shoulder, shedding tears, no longer the little kid who used to argue with me over a candy. His tall stature stood out even more, yet he seemed vulnerable, tears creating watermarks on my shoulder. Peter cried heartbreakingly under the street lamp, the dim light forming a halo on his hair. He looked like he could break at any moment. I couldn't help but soften. That day under the street lamp, I held him and said, "Peter, I won't lie to you, never. I'll be by your side. So, don't lie to me, okay?" Peter agreed. Peter also broke his promise. The one who betrays vows should swallow 1,000 needles. Peter and his buddies looked down on me, the tag-along who followed him since childhood, making fun of me as Peter's little wife. It was because I had hidden all my thorns before Peter. I was never one with a good temper. As I got off the plane, the phone rang. This time it was my mom. Before I could speak, my mom rushed to scold me furiously. "Christine, are you crazy? Do you know what you've done? Peter's parents have come looking for you. Peter's company was just getting on track, and you had to create such chaos. You're set on ruining Peter, aren't you? I'm so embarrassed to have given birth to a daughter like you." Every word my mom said stabbed my heart, but I got used to it after hearing it so often. My mom really liked Peter. She wished more for Peter to be her son than me. That's why she insisted I marry Peter, and that Peter call her his mom. I couldn't help but ask her, "Mom, do you know that Peter cheated on you?" There was a brief silence on the other end of the phone. I could even imagine my mom's expression at that moment, probably a mix of embarrassment and anger. So what if he cheated? Which man doesn't stray nowadays? Besides, Peter assured us it was just a fling. His wife is, and will always be you. You caused such a fuss over nothing. Are you out of your mind? I fell silent for a while, interjecting before my mom could continue. I want to hear Peter tell me those words. I want to hear Peter say to my face that it was just a fling with that woman. My mom's tough tone suddenly softened. I didn't listen to the rest and just hung up the phone, blocking her number. Finally, the world was quiet, and I could finally start peeling Peter out of my life bit by bit. When I returned to London, Peter was at the airport waiting for me. This was the first time we faced each other since our argument. Seeing the bruises under his eyes and the stubble on his chin, it was clear he hadn't been doing well lately. What's up? I stirred my coffee, asking him emotionlessly. Peter was taken aback by my calm demeanor. He stuttered for a moment. It wasn't until I stood up to leave that he caught up and stopped me. "Let's talk about marriage." I felt like Peter might actually have a problem with his mind. How else could he still think I'd continue with him? Maybe my expression was too sarcastic because Peter got a bit irritated. "Coco is just my sister." I couldn't help but laugh. "Do you believe that yourself?" Peter clicked his tongue, scratched his head. "I'm just messing around with her. A pretty college graduate, good at pleasing me. It's just to pass the time. Why are you making a fuss? What man doesn't have a bit of scandal? Your mother doesn't think this is an issue. Why are you overreacting and causing my company to lose several big contracts?" I nodded. "That's good then. I'm relieved to hear you're losing money." Finally, a hint of anger appeared on Peter's handsome face. "Christine, do you only feel comfortable when you've ruined me?" He pulled Coco over, gave her a kiss in front of everyone in the cafe, and declared, "I will marry Coco. You can wait to be seen as a dumped woman by everyone." Peter's face displayed a sense of revenge, while Coco was overwhelmed with joy and momentarily forgot to act up. Peter's buddies naturally joined in the excitement, eagerly offering their congratulations. If this had been before, I might have been really upset. But now, I just shrugged my shoulders and found it all rather amusing. Peter was like a wilted vegetable to me, with no connection whatsoever. Whether he got married or stayed single, what did it matter to me? Only those with an excessive sense of self-importance would think I would regret bitterly. I would never punish myself for the sake of others. It was a waste of my time just to look at this group of people. Just as I was about to leave, Lucas suddenly mocked me. "Christine, as a woman like you, leaving Peter would mean nothing. If you kneel down and apologize to Peter now, maybe he'll forgive you." I paused my steps. Let's see who ends up kneeling before whom. Okay, I admit, I quite enjoy wasting time. When I got home, my mother immediately launched into a tirade, blaming me for her losing Peter, her golden son-in-law. She scolded me for being incompetent and letting another woman steal Peter away. "You worthless thing, go to his house right now and apologize. Even if you have to kowtow, beg, or kneel down, you must coax Peter back for me. Otherwise, I don't want you as my daughter anymore." I didn't want to argue with my mother, but seeing that I had no intention of going to Peter, she grew so angry that she slapped me across the face. "Hurry up and go over there. If Peter doesn't become my son-in-law, you might as well not consider me your mother." Thrown off balance, my head hit the wall. There was a hint of regret on my mother's face, but quickly she forced me to go to Peter's house. "So, do you want me as your daughter or Peter?" Without hesitation, my mother blurted out, "Definitely Peter." Realizing what she seemed to have just admitted, she quickly apologized to me. But I didn't want to hear anything more. "Fine, from now on, let Peter take care of you in your old age." "I'm no longer your daughter." My mother, in a fit of rage, continued to berate me, calling me heartless and ungrateful. I cut her off, refusing to hear her complaints. "It's all because you thought I wasn't a son, that's why Dad divorced you. You held a grudge against Dad, then remarried and had a son, blaming everything on me. You refused to take responsibility for your mistakes and place all the blame on me. Mom, I'm truly exhausted. This is the last time I'll address you like this. From now on, I wish you well." After saying that, I gathered my things, not looking back, and left the house. My mother stood at the door, screaming hysterically, calling me heartless. If not having a conscience means being heartless, then so be it. At least I can live happily. The next morning, I received a notice. I had been fired from the company. While packing up my personal belongings at the office, I coincidentally ran into Coco. She looked at me with arrogance, flaunting a large engagement ring in her hand. "Did you see this? This is the engagement ring Peter bought for me. You've been with him for so many years, have you ever seen such a large diamond before?" I remained silent, quietly packing up my things. Her flaunting seemed to fall on deaf ears, and she suddenly became furious, confronting me. "Christine, you're just a dumped woman, a loser. After all these years, you couldn't make Peter like you, or agree to marry you. You're really worthless. But I'm different, young, and beautiful." She could dish out interfering in the relationships of others and being a mistress. My voice was low as I quietly replied. This silence seemed to cast a hush over the entire room, as all eyes turned to me and her Coco's face turned red with anger, and she raised her hand to strike me. It was then that our company's technical team leader, Helen, who was responsible for the company's back-end, intervened. With a stern expression, Helen pushed Coco to the ground when she noticed Coco was about to raise her hand. Coco flailed on the ground like a dead dog, cursing loudly. "Women like you will never have anyone in their lives. I will make sure Peter fires you. You don't need Peter to fire me. I'll leave on my own." I took off my work badge and threw it in Coco's face, then walked away, leaving Helen followed by a few other female colleagues from the technical department. "We're going with Christine." Coco hadn't expected that her intention to humiliate me would result in a group of technical staff leaving the company with me. While she seemed unable to accept the situation, she couldn't bring herself to apologize to me. Ultimately, pride won over reason, and she sneered, pointing to the door. "Fine, leave then. Let's see if you can find a company with such good conditions after you've left." As I put down the last document, I smiled and looked at her as a resounding slap landed on her face. "This is the lesson you get for interfering in relationships that I didn't get to give you earlier. And as for my employees, you don't have to worry. We're not like you, always holding out our hands for money. With the skills we have, we won't go hungry anywhere." As the other girls behind me all said they were coming with me, we walked out of the company's doors along with Peter and Lucas standing at the entrance. Their faces darkened as they saw me leading my staff out of the company. "Christine, you are shameless, playing dirty. Just because you took the employees doesn't mean we can't find better ones." I shrugged past him, saying, "I'll wait to see if you can find better ones." As we passed each other, Peter suddenly grabbed my arm. "Your mom came to my house and cried, asking to apologize on your behalf." "She's not my mom." Ignoring their disdainful gazes, I walked away with my employees, straight to the house my father bought me. It was a penthouse apartment in the city center, with 2 floors. Over the years, I had never moved in because I cared about how my mother felt. It ended up as the starting point for my entrepreneurial journey. With the internet industry booming, it was the perfect time to start a business, and with hard work, anyone could succeed. Who said that only men could start businesses and run companies? This group of employees had been through thick and thin with me, and I paid them no less than what Peter paid. I turned the second floor of the penthouse into company dorms, saving them money on accommodation and commuting. 7 or 8 people formed a small team, and after 6 months of hard work, we had built a successful business. I saw the trending news of Peter and Coco getting married, with both of them hiring marketing professionals and social media influencers to downplay any negative effects from my previous revelations, flooding the comment sections with declarations of their undeniable love. Nancy was livid and wanted to create fake accounts to retaliate against them. But I felt it wasn't necessary. It was a waste of time to pay attention to irrelevant people. Experiences like this had happened 7 or 8 times before. Coco, lacking a sense of security, kept harassing me with messages, boasting about how well she matched Peter and how I was unworthy of him. I almost felt sorry for her, as her worth seemed solely based on being compatible with a man. While Peter was busy with his wedding celebrations and his friends making fun of me, my company secured its first round of funding, allowing us to move out of the small office and into a proper office building. An entire floor was dedicated to my company, an achievement built by me and my team. On the day we moved, we celebrated with a hot pot feast at the office. As we were leaving, I unexpectedly ran into Peter and Coco in the underground parking lot. The two of them seemed to be arguing, and their faces changed when they saw me. "What are you looking at? Don't think you have a chance anymore." Just as they were arguing one moment, Coco suddenly rushed forward, pushing me to the ground. "I knew you were an annoying woman who couldn't let go. Just wait and see." What she meant by wait and see was to publicly shame me online, inciting internet users to cyberbully me, claiming that I was disruptive, couldn't move on after a breakup, and was entangled in unresolved affairs. Initially, I didn't pay much attention, but she insisted on involving my company and my employees. While Coco's live stream was in full swing selling misery, I played an audio recording. It was Peter's assurance to me in the coffee shop that it was just a casual fling with him. This was during the peak of online criticism against them. Bringing up old grievances, the netizens who had been wrongly swayed by marketing accounts were now the backbone of the backlash. But within half an hour, Coco was forced to shut down the live stream. She called me, hysterically accusing me of being shameless, ruthless, and even recording the call. I handed the phone to Peter, along with records of Coco and Lucas staying at a hotel. "You look quite green." Peter stared at the phone without speaking for a while. Just as I was about to leave, he suddenly stopped me. "Christine, I'm sorry," he said. That "I'm sorry" had been long awaited. But when I heard it from his own lips, I let it go again. "Peter, you indeed owe me an apology." His eyes reddened, showing the same vulnerability he displayed in front of me before. "Christine, I know you're alone now, not yet married. Let's start over." Before he could finish his sentence, a glass of iced water was thrown in his face. "Are you a bit more sober now? If you are, then you should know not to mess with me." That night, Peter kept staring at me intensely. I found it uninteresting. He seemed like he never really matured, living his life as if in a romantic drama. Later, he approached me again, saying he had divorced Coco and that Lucas had been suppressed by his family. Now this adulterous couple were being denounced by everyone like rats crossing the street. I wasn't surprised by this news. I had played a part in it. I was never a benevolent person, so I paid special attention to Coco. Every time Coco tried to leverage her fading fame, even the negative kind, to build a career online, I would spend money to hire marketing accounts to overshadow her. Over time, no one would remember her. The next time I saw her, she was selling goods in the night market, fighting over a spot with someone else, both covered in blood. And I was sitting in the back of a Maybach, separated by a car window, worlds apart. I had Helen drive me back to the same KTV we had visited before. It was the same private room, with Peter and his group of friends. But this time, the atmosphere in the room was one of a proposal. Peter had aged a lot and had become more composed, no longer the spirited young man he once was. When he saw me standing at the doorway, he knelt on one knee. "Christine, marry me." For the past 6 months, I had not rejected his pursuit, had not agreed, and would only accept his invitations. When faced with his proposal, I did not refuse either. He seemed to believe we still had a chance. How could there be any possibility? I have always been someone who repays grievances. With everyone watching in excitement, some even taking photos with their phones, I smiled at him. "You're dreaming." After saying that, regardless of his expression, I turned around and walked away. Peter panicked, quickly coming after me to stop me. But Helen was no ordinary person. She easily brought him down with a few moves. Looking down on him, I said, "I told you to sober up." He looked at me and suddenly started crying. But it was too late. I wouldn't be soft-hearted for him anymore.